Today, we will start the first module that is part of a completely beginner course as an introduction in Python. We will be going over what programming is, what Python is, and what it can be used for, along with the most basic things to start with in this journey. So let's take it step by step. First of all, we want to understand what programming really means. Let's say you have a robot that can do anything: cook, play music, solve math, even draw pictures, but only if you give it the exact instruction in a language the robot understands. Telling the computer or robot what to do step by step using a special language it understands. Let's take a real life example. Just like you follow a recipe from a cooking book to cook a dish, the computer follows the program to do a task. Easy, right? But what exactly you can do with Python? Automate repetitive tasks, which is scripting, develop web application using frameworks like Flask and Django, build desktop application even with graphical user interface, analyze large data, and we all know how well Python is doing in the AI domain. The first important thing about Python is that it is an interpreted language. What does that mean? Well, that means it is read and executed line by something called an interpreter. You don't need to compile the whole program into machine code, which is zeros and ones, before running it. Let's see what are the pros and cons compared to a compiled language like C or C++. Starting with an interpreted language, it is easy to test and debug because you can run your code right away and see what happens line by line. It is cross-platform, usually works on any system with the interpreter. You don't need to recompile it. It is beginner-friendly because you can learn and experiment faster. And it is more flexible. You can change the code and run it instantly. It's great for quick scripts or data work. In terms of cons, runs slower because the interpreter reads and executes each line every time. It needs the interpreter installed because otherwise you cannot run it. And it's not great for big apps that need high speed. It's not ideal for real-time systems like video games or high-performing tools. On the other hand, the compiled language is faster in performance because once compiled, the code is turned into machine code and runs super fast. It is better for large projects because often it is used for apps that need high performance and efficiency, and there is no interpreter needed at runtime. It is also slower to test and develop because you have to recompile the whole program after every change before running it. It is harder to debug. Sometimes error might not show up until compile time or might be harder to trace, and it is less beginner friendly because more setup, stricter rules, and often more complex syntax. Now that we understand all these concepts, let's see how we can set up our environment to write and execute our first Python script. Can you guess what do we need to run the Python code? Well, yeah, that's simple. We need a text editor and also an interpreter, which in our case will be Python, and for the text editor we will be using Visual Studio Code. We can download Python by going into the official website python.org/downloads, and in here you can select download Python 3.13.3, which is the latest stable version. I will select this one. And for the Visual Studio Code, you can go into code, visualstudio.com, and you can download it for Windows or for the operating system that you are using. Now, I already have Visual Studio installed, but for Python, after you downloaded this one, we open it and let's run the installer. I will fast forward a little bit the process so you can just follow me over this process. Okay, now that we have Python installed, what we would like to do is open a command prompt and try to see if Python was correctly installed by running this command, which is checking what Python version we have installed. And as you can see, I received Python 3.13.3, which is the version that I just installed. In case you have issue and Python won't be found in your system, what you can do is make sure you go into the environment variables, and in here you make sure over the path, press edit, and make sure you have Python in here added. Now let's open Visual Studio Code and see what we have here. On the top side we have some commands, right? We have file where we can open new folder, we can create new files, but let's say we want to open a folder. I created myself a folder for this module and I will select it. Now, as you can see in the Explorer here, I have folder. In case you don't see the Explorer, it means on the left ribbon, you would see that we have a bunch of options. First one is Explorer, where you can see the folders and files you have inside the folders. There is a search button, the source controller, which we will discuss later on, and the most important one is extensions, because first thing that we have to do is come in here and type Python. We would like to install the Python extension in the Visual Studio Code. Now you go and look for Python, which is this one. I already have it installed and active, but you can go and install it. After that, make sure you can also open the terminal from here. You go into the three dots, terminal, and new terminal. You can also type Python ---- version here to make sure Python is correctly installed and Visual Studio Code is also correctly recognizing it. Now, what we can do is in this one here icon which says new file, or you can just go into here and select new file, you can create a new file and we will call it first Python script. And the extension for the Python is .py. We want to add this extension so that Visual Studio Code will understand this is a Python file. Inside here, what we can do is write our first Hello World program. And you can see that in Python, it is very easy to write it. We just go with print, and inside those brackets, inside the quotes, we type hello world. Now, if we want to run this script, we can do with two methods. First, you can use the terminal, which would be Python and run the name of the Python file, which will do nothing, and I will show you exactly why. You see, I did this intentional because on the right side of the name, you will see that there is white dot, which means I did not save the file. Now, as you can see, I press Ctrl+S, which is save command, and it saved the file. Now, if I rerun this, you will see that the console will be printing hello world. What you can do is running the Python file directly from here. And you can see that the Visual Studio Code executed the Python file directly and you will get the hello world. The last part I want to cover in this first module is syntax. Syntax in programming refers to the set of rules that define the structure of valid code. It dictates how programs should be written so that the computer can understand and execute them correctly. In simple terms, syntax is like grammar in a spoken language. So let's cover a few of them. The first rule that I want to cover is indentation. So in easy terms, indentation are basically some spaces which we use in order to determine if a code block is defined. So let me show you how this works. So I have a variable which is name, and this is equal to Boden. Now I want to create an if statement. So if name is actually Boden, then I want to print something. And you will see that now the print line will happen a little bit to the right. And in here, this space right here, it's called indentation. This is going to tell if this print will happen only if this condition is met. Now, if I run this, it will print because the name is actually Boden. But if I change this to other name like John, and if I run this again, you will see that the yes is no longer printed because this print statement, it's inside this if statement. So having this indentation will basically tell the computer that this will be run only if this condition is met. But what if we want to have another if inside this if? So I create another variable, which is age, and I equal this to 28. And I want to create another if here, calling that if age is 28 and print another yes. You will see that now we have another indentation added here because there is another if that it's part of this if already. Another rule that I want to show you is that Python is case sensitive. So if we have a variable which is name and we equal this again with Boden, and I want to call this variable later on. So if name equal to Boden, then I want to print something. Let's print yes. Now this is going to work because you will see that we have the same variable. But what if I want to call this variable name with capital N? You will see that it's no longer recognized, and if I try to run this, it will say that the variable called name, it's not defined, and ask me if I mean to say name. This is because Python is case sensitive. Same way goes with strings. If I want this one, for example, in a correct way, but then write button with lower b, you will see that this Python code will no longer return yes, because button it's written with lower b. But now if I go with a capital B, you will see that the script will return yes. Cool thing that you probably already noticed is that Python does not require to have a semicolon at the end of each line. So this is another rule basically. You don't have to end each statement with a semicolon, but you can still have multiple statements on a single line which are separated by the semicolon. So I want to have age equal to 28. So you can define multiple variables in a single line. You can do this with multiple statements, but this is not preferred. It's better to do this way. And the last rule that we will be discussing today is reserved words. So Python have a few reserved words that we cannot use as variable names. Let's say for example if. If I want to create a variable named if and equal this to button, you can see that I'm already getting an error because if it's a reserved word that we can use in order to create an if condition. So pay attention when you create your variable name. Let's take a look over a comparison between Python and JavaScript, which is another programming language. Marked with red are the additional things that JavaScript requires. You can see that the statements are ending with a semicolon. If conditions are defined in parentheses, and the code blocks are also defined in braces. While in Python, we only use indentation, and this is one of the reasons why Python is considered to be easier. Now that you already know a lot about Python, you can go ahead and play with the print statement that we just learned. In the next video, we will be covering variables and data structures. Till then, make sure you subscribe to be notified when I upload it. And if you learned something new today, make sure you drop a like and a comment with your favorite part.